on a chilly Tuesday morning, the kind that feels like winter's last stand. 17-year-old Sophie sat on the creaky steps of her foster home's back porch. She pulled her oversized jacket tighter, staring at the dull, gray sky. Months away from aging out of the foster system, Sophie had long accepted a painful truth. No one wanted her. It wasn't just a feeling, it was her reality, carved from years of moving through over a dozen foster homes. Younger kids, the ones with wide eyes and open hearts, were always chosen first. Sophie, she'd been labeled too quiet, too moody, too hard to love. That morning, she overheard her foster mom murmur to a social worker, "She's got a good heart, but we're not equipped for her ups and downs. She needs someone tougher, more patient." Sophie shrank into herself, swallowing the hurt, pretending it didn't sting. But it did, more than anyone knew. Across town, 35-year-old Mark sat in his pickup truck outside a community center, the engine off, the silence heavy. He was a single dad to 7-year-old Ava, a girl with a smile that could light up a room. 3 years ago, Mark's world crumbled when his wife, Sarah, died in a car accident. Since then, he'd been juggling everything: work, parenting, bedtime stories, and shielding Ava from his own grief. He wasn't looking to date or replace Sarah. His heart wasn't ready. But Ava's questions had started to pile up. "Why don't I have a mom like my friends? Are you lonely, Daddy? Can we have a bigger family?" Her words, so simple, hit him hard. He didn't know how to explain loss to a child, but he knew he needed to do something for Ava, and for himself. That's why he ended up at a foster parent information session, unsure if he was chasing a sign or just answers. Their paths crossed at a foster agency's community dinner, a casual event meant to connect older teens with potential guardians. Sophie hadn't wanted to go. Her social worker practically dragged her there. Mark nearly bailed, second-guessing himself the whole drive. But something pulled them both to that room. Sophie sat alone at a corner table, poking at her food. Mark was nearby, handing Ava a plate of cookies. Their eyes locked for a moment, nothing dramatic, just a glance. Then Ava, bursting with her usual energy, ran over to Sophie and said, "I like your jacket, wanna sit with us?" Sophie hesitated, then shrugged and joined them. It was the first time in months she'd chosen to engage. They talked mostly Mark and Ava, with Sophie listening, but she smiled, just a bit. And Mark noticed, over the next few weeks, something quietly grew. Mark signed up to be Sophie's mentor, a step the agency offered to build trust before fostering. He showed up for her, driving her to appointments, helping with math homework, inviting her to pizza nights with Ava. Sophie stayed cautious, bracing for the moment the kindness would fade, like it always did. But Mark didn't waver. He was just there, steady and unhurried. One evening, as they washed dishes after dinner, Sophie blurted, "Why are you bothering? I'm not some kid you can fix. You don't owe me." Mark set down a plate, looked at her, and said, "I'm here because you're worth it, Sophie. Not as a project, as a person." She brushed it off with a smirk. But later, alone in her room, she cried, not out of pain, but because someone might actually see her. The road wasn't smooth. When Mark applied to foster Sophie, his friends raised eyebrows. A teenager with everything you're already handling. His job barely gave him breathing room, and coordinating schedules for Ava and Sophie was a logistical mess. Ava sometimes got jealous, unsure how to share her dad. Sophie, too, struggled. She bolted once, after a fight about house rules, and again when she overheard a neighbor whisper, "She's not even his real kid." Each time, Mark didn't give up. He found her, sat with her, waited until she was ready to talk. He wasn't perfect some days. He was exhausted, frustrated, unsure, but he stayed. One stormy Thursday night, after almost a year together, Sophie was at the kitchen table, helping Ava color posters for a school project. Mark walked in, holding a plain envelope. He slid it across to Sophie and said, "This is the date for your adoption, if you're ready." Sophie froze, staring at the envelope. "Why me?" she whispered, voice cracking. Mark leaned in, his voice calm but sure. "Because you're already family, Sophie. I want to make it real, but only if you do." Tears spilled down her face. She tried to speak, but all that came out was, "No one wants me." Mark reached for her hand. "I do. We do. You belong with us." The adoption day was quiet, a small courtroom, a handful of friends, Ava clutching Sophie's hand. When the judge finalized it, Sophie broke down, not from fear, but from the overwhelming truth that she finally had a home. Sometimes, family isn't born, it's chosen. Sophie didn't need rescuing. She needed someone to stay. Mark didn't need to fill a void. He needed to grow his heart. This is a story of love that doesn't give up, of healing through one unexpected yes, and of finding belonging when you thought it was lost forever.